the repayment's going to be affordable at the end of the month, because that will be replaced from your income, your earned income, then I would use it more for the discretionary spending, things like fuel and things like that.
So
fuel, food,
mobile phone
that sort of
companies
stuff.
and that. I mean, I know you can't set up like a direct debit with the credit card, but I mean, if you're making like the one-off payments every month, you possibly could use your credit card in that way, because you're.
I think you probably could do one-off payments. I've never done that.
Okay.
I've always automated as much as I can, so I've got a really clear idea of what's going in and what's going out, and I don't. There's not a list of things for me to do every month, because I can automate it. It's also, I would prefer most of my bills to come from earned money.
Yeah.
And then I know that, okay, what I've earned is covering my basic living costs. And then your additional spending on top of that is where I think credit card can be quite useful, because that's your more variable spending that then can be cleared at the start of each month.
Cool. So use it sparingly.
Yeah, and
Sparingly.
but then again, like I said earlier, there's different uses for credit cards. So some people take out credit cards to buy let's say that lovely sofa you have over there.
Yeah.
It could be £1,000. Maybe it does. Someone doesn't have £1,000, but you don't need. No, I don't think anyone needs to spend £1,000 on a sofa. But for a lot of people, that's important to them, and therefore they think, right, credit card, 0% interest for 12 months, and they'll use that to buy the sofa.
Yeah.
And then they might have also got some benefits of points and building some credit and the other things that come with it. Probably a poor example, because a lot of furniture companies now will offer 0% on a period of time for larger purchases anyway. But they've
it's because they're too expensive to begin with. But
and it's a bit of a sneaky way for them to offer up higher priced items to the wider market. My partner asked me the other day why they don't make any money off a 0% finance for 12 months. Why would they even offer it? And I said, well, how many people have got £2,500, for example, sat in their savings ready to just be spent on something random? People do, but most people don't.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden you make that item affordable to everybody, you've doubled, tripled, quadrupled, 10x your market. So they'll be able to sell that sofa to 10 times more people than they could before. And that's why they do it. It's not generosity. It's not charitable.
And their profit margins are good on things like that anyway, because the cost of the raw materials isn't usually that high.
Exactly. So they're profitable companies. They don't necessarily require all that money up front. They're not having, well, some of them do have cash flow issues and some of them do go to the wall, but by and large, they're well-run companies.
Yeah. So we've mentioned credit score a few times. Just why is building a credit score so important for a young person's future?
Super important. In life, most people, I know we talked about, it'd be great if you could just buy large assets with cash, but most people will need a mortgage to buy their first home. Now, buying a property in this country, it has been sort of, I guess, our version of the American dream, owning your own property. We're obsessed with it in the UK. Very land orientated. In the continent, in Europe, you go to Germany, places like that, ownership of property is not a lifelong ambition. Most people rent out there. It's just not really a thing that they think too much about.
Okay.
It's more associated with hoarding of wealth and greed, and they've got a bit more of maybe a bit more of a socialist outlook on life.
Right.
For right or wrong. So that obsession we have with property has led to private property ownership driving prices through the roof over the last 30 years particularly. A lot of that's down to foreign money coming in as well, whether that's Middle Eastern or Russian money, which has pushed up prices of properties particularly in London. Right. But typically, our population's increased, our number of houses hasn't increased by enough, and therefore prices have risen. So property as an investment has looked great for the last 30 years. There's no guarantee that it will be for the next 30 years, because there might be changes to our growth in population. There might be changes to our level of outside investment. All those things are subject to change. But back to the crux of property and why that is typically viewed as a good thing is, instead of paying rent to a landlord to clear their mortgage on a property, they've probably got their mortgages on second properties. You are contributing to your own asset, which you own. And typically, the interest on your mortgage repayments is going to be less than the rent you would pay on a rented property. It's not always the case. And actually, as recently as a couple of years ago, rent was actually cheaper than the interest on a repayment mortgage. So forget the repayment you're paying on top of the interest, but just the interest alone. So if interest rates get high enough, then all of a sudden that could be, instead of paying a landlord a load of money, you're paying the bank a load of money. Yes, you still own the asset, but if you've got a relatively secure tenancy agreement in a rented property, then other than that security in the back of your mind of knowing that no landlord can just kick you out and give you some notice to move, if you're okay with that and you don't mind moving house every now and again, then renting can be, you can stack it up side by side and say, look, there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
But
also get to an age where you're probably not earning any money anymore, and rent could be challenging.
Yeah, look, I've funny enough, I've dealt with a situation through work that's similar to this, and he's still renting, and he has decided against advice to pull a huge chunk of money out of his pension because he's desperate to own his own property, and he's paid a whopping great tax bill to get the money out of his pension, so that the house has cost him significantly more than it should have done.
Yeah.
Because he had to pay a lot of tax to get the money out of his pension fund to pay for the property, and that was down to a later life. All of your friends, all of your family own property. It just becomes a bit of a stigma that you don't want to live with.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing to be renting, but as you said, that's a cost he can now remove from his monthly outgoings.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understood it from his point of view, and I understand absolutely why owning a property is a better option than renting. But if you want to own a property, chances are you haven't got the cash to buy for the property outright. So building a credit score, to come back to your question, is a way that you'll be able to lend money from a variety of different lenders. You want to be able to have options when it comes to taking a mortgage out, because you want to get the best option possible. You want to get the lowest rate of interest on your mortgage. You want to get, ideally, a lender that's very reputable. You want to have options in terms of terms, and the way that you'll be able to increase all of these things and get the most beneficial interest rate and the best deal is by having a really good credit score. And you build that credit score largely by managing debt. An easy way to do that is through a credit card.
Okay, so essentially as well, a good score gets them lower interest rates on those sort of loans, like a mortgage.
Which might not, you might think, okay, well, I'll get